double check this. Nokia Kamau. Kamau.
Oh, look here. Ko navahi. Okay, ka lumi pa ekahi.
Oh yeah? Oh. Alika papa ma navahi. Ma kakaula. Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, Oma, do me a favor. Go to the door and look at my backpack. A small pocket in my backpack. Here's my headphones.
like this last summer I was talking about rhythm, right? Okay, I was like thinking it was okay. And her and the other friend, they're really the basketball heads, right? So
Are we on?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Okay, 複数よ、中が涙のから始まり便。中や面相地、君相地、いっぺんに経営できる。Wanna welcome all you guys back, and then also those of you online. So just some announcements before we start. So next month again is the second Sunday here in Hilo. Also, next month, for those of you on Oahu, there's the Jikoen Bon Dance that's on the third Saturday of next month. We'll be having a Okinawa food booth. That's our Ukwanshin fundraiser. So if you folks are in Honolulu, please come and help support Jikoen's Bon Dance, and also our pretty much that's our main fundraiser for Ukwanshin. We make laugh tables, Okinawa soba, and we make the dashi from scratch too, so it's pretty good. And then also kandaba jushi. So we'll be selling all of that at the Jikoen Bon Dance. So if you're around in Honolulu again, that's on the third Saturday, only one night next month. Yeah. It's at Jikoen Temple in Kalihi. Yeah, on the corner of Like and School Street. Yeah, across Kitty Corner to Kamehameha Shopping Center. Yeah, and across of Kapalama Elementary. Yeah. Okay. And then also, I do have Norman brought back Shuri Kutuba, or the Shuri dialect language books, if anybody wants. This is by, it's co-written by Mashi Sakihara, who also wrote the, helped to write the dictionary that the most of you guys have too, yeah. So if you guys want, and then those of you online, if you want, you can let us know, and Norman can mail it to you. It's $10. Those of you who need it mailed, it's $10 plus postage. Yeah. Okay. So that's
it's all in Japanese.
Oh, sorry. He said it's all in Japanese. If you want it translated, it's $100.
But Mashi's gonna be putting up English PDF.
Oh, okay. The English PDF is coming out, so you guys can wait for that too if you want. But let us know so we can send it out to you guys when it does come out for the English PDF for the Shuri language, or Shuri Kutuba. Also, for those of you in Hilo, or even wherever you are, if you know Kotaro, he just announced his candidacy for Nishihara Town councilman. So he's going to be running for that. Election is in September. Yeah. So, but if you guys get a hold of him, push him to finish his PhD. So we want him to finish that also. Yeah, not only think about this, because all he has to do is finish that, do his dissertation. So he's right at the finish line. He just needs to finish, but he's also going to need support for this candidacy for Nishihara Town. Yeah, sorry, unless you have Okinawa residency, yeah, you cannot vote for him. But he is looking for donations and things like that too. So he's going to need a lot of support from family and friends. Yeah. So, and I think that's it on the, anything else for announcements? No? Yeah. Okay, so we're good on that. Okay, so today we're gonna continue or kind of, let's go over the internalizing identity. Last month we had visitors from the Jemez Pueblo that came to talk to us, and we found out about what they're doing with their language there, and some things that they're going through. So we kind of cut the beginning short. So we're just going to go over real fast the beginning, and then also go into this on what we look at as identity, internalizing identity. So before, at the beginning of this, I wanted to start off. Norman has a song that we'll go over again. But when you guys are looking at the song and the words, kind of think about how we internalize our identity, or how we should be internalizing our identity. Yeah. And what we actually do now, yeah, or if what you should be doing now to pass on things from our ancestors. Okay, so before we go into the rest of this, can I get some of your interpretations of what you guys think about what the words to this song means, if we're looking at identity or internalizing identity? Those of you online, if you can type in stuff too if you want. Sorry, there's no there's no Zoom, so we don't have any live commentary. What is your interpretation of this as connected to identity? So what is this song? What do you think the poem is trying to say?
That maybe we don't understand our parents because we don't understand the language, or we don't understand the culture that happened before us, because it wasn't really followed through in Hawaii.
Anybody else?
Somebody said pollination.
Cross-pollination?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So if we look at the first line, like the passing of the seasons, what can that be? Yeah, so grandparents, your generations, yeah. So with the passing of the generations, all of the trees and shrubs. So if we look at nature, yeah, so nature was really something that our ancestors looked at to learn from. Yeah, so we talked about before in another presentation about ncharu, or to be able to observe how we, in Hawaiian the word is kilo, yeah, how we observe things. So there's the indigenous way of observing, and then there's the Western way where we learned, or what we pulled in from what we got from school, or from how we look at it in a Western sense. But in the indigenous way of looking at it, we look at the outside, yeah. So they were very observant because they didn't have all of these other technical distractions. So of all the trees and shrubs, they know how to behave, yeah. So if we look at nature, every generation in nature, they know how to survive. They know how to regenerate. Yeah, everything is passed down if we look at nature. But then, why then do those of us born as humans not understand our parents? Yeah. So what about human beings like us? Yeah. What happens to us? How come these things, like what Lynn was saying, it's not passed down? You know, it's not regenerated again. What's happening? What is the thing with that? Yeah. Okay. So kind of think about that as we go through. So what we looked at before was this thing that how we introduce ourselves, or how we the identity that we have. On the continent, they say Asian American. Yeah. But in Hawaii, we don't say Asian and we don't say American. We just say our ethnicity. Yeah. If somebody asks, "Oh, what are you?" Yeah. Most of us here would say Uchinanchu, yeah, Okinawan, or Japanese, Chinese. They here in Hawaii, we don't say, "Oh, I'm Japanese American," or "I'm Okinawan American," or that American label doesn't matter to us here. Yeah. So that's what's different about our identity here in Hawaii. Why do you think that's different from, like, and in Okinawa, a lot of them will say, "I'm Japanese," and then they'll say, "Oh, I'm Uchinanchu." Yeah. And some of them won't even say, "I'm Okinawan." They'll identify themselves as Japanese. Yeah. So why do you think it's different here in Hawaii, that when somebody asks us, that's what we come out with our ethnicity, and there's no connection to that American identity? I mean, there's still people here that Okinawans who would say, "Oh, I'm Japanese." Yeah. But we don't hear that I'm Japanese American, or I'm Okinawan American, or Chinese American.
We live on this small island, and from plantation days, nobody said American. They just said their ethnicity.
Yeah, yeah, good answer. Yeah, from it comes down from plantation days. Yeah. So again, if we connect that back to that song, yeah, it's something that has been passed down and still done even within the generation now. That's something that's been preserved. Yeah, that the way that we identify ourselves that way.
Do we also just assume that if we're living in one of the, 50 states, that we're all American, whatever status we might have? Or whatever background we drop the American part because you assume that we're all in that same category?
I don't know. For some of us, well, for myself, I don't even think about the American part of it because to me, we live in Hawaii and I don't consider this part of the United States. Yeah, for me, that's the separation. You know, that's that distance between us and the continent. I mean, I was brought up to have that American identity, but I never connected to it. Yeah, I don't know about, maybe that's me, but there's the senior generation here that might think differently. I don't know what you guys think. And then now we have the younger generation too. But what do you guys think about that? Her question, like, about that connection that we just take it for granted that we're American. That's why we don't use American. We don't use that as part of our describing who we are.
Somebody had a comment saying they're Uchina Americanchu because I'm definitely from the colony. That's just one of the comments.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Said, try to say that again.
Somebody was just saying that they would consider themselves Uchina Americanchu because they're from the colony.
From the colony. So that person, I think, is coming from the continent. Yeah. So they describe themselves as Uchina Americanchu.
I think with the younger generations, they all, like in Okinawa, they want to be Japanese. In the United States, they want to be American and adopt American kinds of behavior, I guess, or attitude. Everybody's trying to be what we consider the main street.
The main, the main or the dominant.
The younger, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They all want to fit in. Everybody wants to fit in.
Okay.
At some point.
Anybody else?
During the war too, they wanted to make sure they were identified as Americans.
Good point too, yeah. So those of you online, the other comment was that during the war, they felt that they needed to be American. They needed to have that identity.
That especially rings true for second generation Hawaii guys too.
Second generation Hawaii, yeah.
So like my grandparents, my granddad, straight up like full on American. Fought in the war, and then when they got kids after the war, then their kids were brought up as that same Americanized, like, you know, have the pride of being an American.
What about the younger one, the younger generation that we have? What do you think?
I think the same as what Uncle was sharing about our grandparents having to fight for this title. My great-grandparents, or my great-grandfather was in 442nd, all of my family was in the military. So there was a lot of dignity in that label. And I think for me, I never considered myself Asian American. I heard you saying as we were walking in that like Hawaii is not America, and I was never drawn to Asian American as a label. more so the specific, like I'm Okinawan or Uchinachu, Japanese, Filipino. I think like it resonates a lot too with my friends on Turtle Island where they're like, I don't really call myself Native American unless I'm talking to people who don't understand that there are tribal affiliation in communities, that like if you really want to understand who I am as a person, they'll just say their affiliation. So I'm more drawn to the specific Asian within Asian American. Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry, I came in late, right?
Oh, okay. No, there was a comment. We're looking at this at these labels, yeah. And we're saying in Hawaii we don't connect to that American because we don't say that we're Okinawan American or we're Japanese American. That American title is not connected to our identity when somebody asks us, "Oh, what are you?" Yeah. But then on the continent, that's what they have there. And in Okinawa, they'll say that they're Japanese mostly, and then they'll say they're Okinawan. You know, that dominant identity of being Japanese, the nationality part is very important to them. Yeah. But then here we don't have so much of that use of that identity when we identify ourselves. Yeah. So she was asking, well, you know, what her comment was, is it because we just consider ourselves as part of America, so we just take it for granted and you know, we don't have to mention it.
Yeah, let's see. Since I have like a mixed background of going to school here in like middle school to high school or parts of high school, and then spending most of my high school career in the mainland, or sorry, Turtle Island. I don't really think the Asian American identity came up too much there either, so much as it was just, oh, you're part of the Asians over there. The specifications of whichever nationality that you might have belonged to were completely lost unless you were talking to other Asian people in the community. So then it would be like, oh, you're Japanese, you're Chinese, you're Vietnamese, and then like me, the only one who's Okinawan there. So I think the school that I went to, there was maybe 2,000 students, and there were only about 8 Asian Americans
Oh,
out of that entire
okay.
populace.
Interesting. Yeah. So what he said was that there's that other part where on the continent people are just clumped into Asian identity, unless you're talking with a certain group, and then the other part of that identification comes up as you're Japanese, whatever, or Chinese, or whatever. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment? I lived in Massachusetts for decades and decades. I was never asked what was my background. I don't think anybody asked, like,
Might be where like regional then, yeah.
could be.
Yeah, well, on the East Coast it's like predominantly white too, so maybe that's different from the West Coast where there's a lot of mix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see a lot of color on the West Coast as compared to the East Coast. Yeah. Okay, and another thing to kind of think about is that American label too, yeah. People like to say, oh, you know, American, and some people think it's a Native American word. It's not a Native American word. It's not. It didn't come from the Indians or the Native Americans. They don't even consider that the place called America. Yeah, that's actually came from a person's name that was put onto the continent. Yeah, so it's a white name. It's not that. Yeah. Okay, so what does it mean to be Uchinanchu in Hawaii? Those of you on the continent, you can think about how what does it mean to be Uchinanchu on the continent, on Turtle Island? Indigenous to one place, but living within ongoing occupation of another. Yeah. So those of you who are online from Turtle Island or the continent, you're also, just like those of us in Hawaii, we're occupying space of our indigenous cousins. Yeah. So if we look at re-indigenizing Shimanchu or Okinawan identity in Hawaii or on the continent, requires critical engagement with settler responsibility, grounded in ancestral worldview and enacted through cultural practice. Yeah. So this question is not theoretical, it's lived. It shapes how identity is formed, practiced, and negotiated within Okinawan communities in displaced collectives. So displaced, what I mean by that is diaspora. Yeah. In Hawaii, also on the continent, Okinawan identity is often absorbed into the broader local identity, like on Turtle Island, what was just said, absorbed into the generalized Asian community on the continent. But here in Hawaii, also offering a sense of belonging while simultaneously obscuring deeper political and relational realities. Yeah. Also challenges the question, why do I need to re-indigenize or even take on that identity? And then looking at how it involves decolonization. Yeah, so we'll be talking about all of this. Okay, so wanne ruchunukwa ruyaru. Yeah, I'm a child of Ryukyu. So genealogy connects us to our Uyafapuji, our ancestors. Fourth generation, fifth generation, now I think we're going into the sixth generation. Uchinanchu immigrant settlers require fichi uking, doing fichi uking, yeah, doing responsibility or taking on responsibility. Connected physical and spiritual through cultural ceremony and protocols, cultural practitioners and indigenous scholars within our communities. We also need educators. We should recognize and respect Hawaii and the continent and provide allyship through permission. Connection to indigenous families of Moanaluyakea for those of us in Hawaii, and then for those on the continent, for those on Turtle, your connection to indigenous families on Turtle Island. Indigenous through understanding and internalizing ancestral worldview and connection to Shima. Yeah, we talked about Shima before in another presentation. And then expression through autoethnography, when we look at ourselves and what we're doing in our communities, yeah, to do or pass on what we're doing. Also, it includes our experiences too. Yeah. So let's look at the migration. So this is the Austronesian migration, which we're also part of. So what was this kind of mapping has come out recently, where they've found and connected through not only DNA but a lot through oral stories and also culture. Yeah, when we look at fish hooks, when we look at pottery, when we look at the kinds of traditions, the language, those kinds of things, we can see the migration, and there's stories of this migration too from Taiwan. So Taiwan, when we think of Taiwan, we think of Chinese, yeah. It's not the Chinese Taiwanese. It's the indigenous Taiwanese, that there are various tribes within that area too that went out and set off into the Pacific and started to inhabit all of these islands, including Hawaii, yeah, all the way to Rapa Nui, yeah, or Easter Island. Okay, so Okinawa is also part of that, yeah. Okay, so when we also look at our history, yeah, there's, like any other place, there's layered colonialisms that have affected our identity. Yeah, so the big picture there is the actual picture of the Meiji soldiers that went into Shuri Palace and overthrew our kingdom in 1879, removed the king and forced him to go up to Tokyo to live where I think it's the 5th generation of that dynasty is there now, yeah. But he's changed and he's become very Japanese. He's become very pro-Japanese. The top picture is in the early 1900s, where our people were also put into displayed as human oddities. That picture is from the 1903 Osaka Expo, where the Okinawa girls were put on display with Ainu and other indigenous Asian people. And then the bottom picture is of I forget, what is the name of that kawa? Morinokawa?
Yeah,
Morinokawa in Kinoan. Yeah, so the first time we went to this place, that sign wasn't there. But now that sign is there, and that sign says don't drink the water. It's not good for drinking because of the contamination of PFAS from the US military bases. So the occupation by US military now after World War II has also changed our identity and caused not only loss of pure water, but there's more loss of our land sovereignty and food sovereignty too, yeah, because of contaminated water. So if we look at the other parts of the history, 1429 was the unification of the 3 kingdoms. So that's how far back we can trace our unification of all of the islands together, yeah. And that doesn't mean it was positive, yeah. It was like, if we look at Hawaii too, how Hawaii was all the islands were conquered by Kamehameha, that was not, it wasn't a peaceful thing. There was a lot of fighting and violence and taking over of other people's areas. Recognized as a sovereign entity through international treaties, 1845 was the US, 1855 France, 1859 Holland, and then there's also other treaties that were established with Germany and other European countries after that too, as well as having documents written up and connected with Asian countries, yeah.
Are these treaties economically tied?
Mm. Yeah.
So it gives a country the right to trade or whatever with Okinawa?
With Ryukyu.
Like in 1845 is US, 1855 is, so is that economic kind of treaties?
It's political, more on the political side, yeah.
Mostly to recognize them as being separate from China and Japan.
Yeah.
Because
It's like the Hawaii ones.
at the time, it was very important to make that distinction with these countries.
Yeah.
Because you understand too that these treaties, these Western countries were using these treaties as a means to legitimize their own agendas too.
Yeah, so especially we look at the U.S. treaty, that was through Commodore Perry, yeah, and that was the beginning of the U.S. interventions and how they started to get into Ryukyu. They wanted that because at that time they couldn't get any trade and stuff with Japan because of it was the black ships and all of that was happening at that time. So they went to Ryukyu, yeah, and then they hooked up with Japan after that to help overthrow our kingdom. And then that's how they started to get interest in the ports, Naha Port and that kind of stuff. So from that time already, Commodore Perry was already looking at Okinawa as using it as US military. Yeah. So prior recognition of independence by Asian and Southeast Asian countries, 1609 was the Satsuma invasion. And so we all know by that, the Satsuma, there was all kinds of fighting in Japan still yet, to show power and things, and Satsuma clan wanted to come in, conquer Ryukyu because they wanted the trade, to control the trade with China, made them a puppet state until 1879 when the illegal annexation by Japanese Meiji government happened, and the assimilation and cultural genocide begins that time. 1900 was the displacement of migration to Hawaii. Harsh lives of indentured servitude and racial discrimination. So again, people like to say, oh, you know, you hear very light stories of the plantation, yeah, but it was actually indentured servitude, and it was the whole plantation setup was taken from Massachusetts, yeah, from the slaves, how they were treating the slaves in the plantations in Massachusetts. So, and that's written. You can find the documents in the Library of Congress. Hawaii life in a plantation society. War brings layered colonization and assimilation. 1854 ushers the multi-ethnic Asian-led political movement in Hawaii, where we see a lot of the Asians coming in, and that's how the Democratic Party starts, and how the Democratic Party starts to take over in Hawaii. So before that, like, you know, what we're seeing now, where you know, there's, especially with what's happening with the Hawaiian homelands, with the lawsuit that came up, Prince Kuhio's name is coming up, and you know, he was a Republican, but the Republican Party and how he was at that time is very different how the Republicans are now. Yeah, so here in 1954 we see a whole change in that, where the Asians come in and start to come in the political parties, and then start to take over as the Democratic Party. Present day reminders and validations. The Hawaii remains an illegal occupied nation, even according to both national and international laws. As overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii reminds us, the Aina, the land on which Okinawa identity is lived by communities of descendants of displaced first-generation settlers, is itself still contested and actively defended. Yeah. So this is the same also in the continent, for those of you on the continent, except that the Native Americans really have had a lot of them had a raw deal where they made treaties with the US, but then they were pushed off of their lands and forced to live on lands that were not as good as where they were originally. Yeah, they were put on places where there was no water and things like that, and not the best lands they were given. So as members of this community, we have to think about where and how do we position ourselves. So some things to think about: our ancestral lands are all we need to validate our responsibility to place and understand solidarity, which means that we look back at our own history and see what happened in Okinawa. Yeah, we shouldn't be looking at Okinawa and saying, oh, that's that's them, that's our relatives or our friends there, that's their problem. What's happening in Okinawa, that's over there. We're in Hawaii, we made a life for ourselves here, we went to school, we worked hard, and we hear that narrative coming out, and then saying, well, some people also say, well, the Hawaiians can do the same thing. Yeah, which is not a good thing to say, because we also have to think about their history, what happened to them, and what generational trauma also means. Yeah, because that's what our people in Okinawa are going through, is that generational trauma. Ancestral worldview is given through traditional values passed down through our kugani kutuba, or ancestral proverbs and lessons. Overlapping histories complicate identity, requiring a framework that can hold both indigeneity and settler positionality. Yeah. So what we mean by that is, when we look at this, we look at the word in Okinawa, kuttai, yeah, which is like, you can turn off and on, yeah. Local identity and settler obscurity, which is category of local. Yeah, we think about that identity too in Hawaii. Yeah, people say, "Oh, I'm local." Yeah, as function as a powerful unifier across ethnic communities. But local identity, especially by Asian settlers, particularly Japanese, used to obscure complicity within the haole in the ongoing oppression of native Hawaiians. Yeah, this was written by Haunani K. Trask in 2008. So that in that Asian or particularly Japanese, that also includes the Okinawans too. So there's a lot of privilege and entitlement in the Asian community and in our Okinawan community. And also there's a denial of indigenous identity. Yeah. If you go into our general Okinawan community in any place and you talk about indigenous, maybe the younger people now, because it's kind of Norman always says it's a buzzword. Now everybody wants to say indigenous or talk about indigenous, yeah. But the majority of our communities still cannot connect to indigenous identity, yeah. Because in school, like from my generation up, I think, the books that we saw, when we looked at indigenous people or when we learned about indigenous people, it was always dark-skinned people or people living in huts or people living in all of these what is called primitive, yeah, not modern places, yeah. So that's the idea of what primitive or what indigenous is, yeah. So this assertion has become necessary as individuals from local and other groups have gone so far as to claim to be Hawaiian and have legally sought to obtain rights designated for Kanaka, such as admission to Kamehameha schools, benefits from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and homes from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Yeah. So this was written by Okamura in 2024, and we see it happening now. Yeah. So another thing, there's the identity. Everybody says, especially when you go to Honolulu on that long weekend to go to the festival, everybody's proud to be Uchinanchu, yeah, which is a good thing. But then what is being Uchinanchu? Is it just something you say when you go to the festival once a year and you're happy to be Uchinanchu, or do you walk the talk? Yeah.
When you walk the talk, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, so that's good question. So let's look at that. Remember that question for the discussion at the end, yeah. So critical reflection, risks and tensions. Not all expressions of Okinawan identity in Hawaii engages in accountability. Ongoing concerns around appropriations, silence, entitled diaspora dynamics. So we look at one of our proverbs, yeah. Kuni washirine uya washiriyung, forget your country, forget your parents. Yeah. So just because we live in a displaced community or a diaspora far away from Okinawa, that's something that we got to think about. How much are we forgetting about these connections or our identity? Yeah. Disconnecting, erasing, entitlement, privilege, and colonized thinking are poisons to indigenous identity. Yeah, so things like disconnecting, erasing roots. Yeah, people say it is what it is. Yeah, they don't want to talk about the discrimination that happened to our first generation. Yeah, there's that. I hear a lot of that in Honolulu. Oh, it is what it is. Don't talk about that anymore. Let's move on. Yeah. The past is a past. And then again, I went to school, I got educated, I did this, I. Yeah. Create self-centered practice. Yeah. In Okinawa, they call it the Wang Kara syndrome. Wang is us, or I, and Kara is from. Yeah. So everything is from me, from me, from me, from me. Priorities and positionality reflect status, accomplishments, material wealth, and commodification. Minimalizes or erases genealogy, heritage, cultural values, ancestral inclusion, and land as life. Becoming dominant colonial identity because it's easier and it needs to evolve, grow, or change. So that's what I hear some people saying too. Yeah. That it needs to evolve. Yeah, culture evolves, identity evolves. It needs to change. Yeah, so we're going to look at that word change. There's a difference between change and evolve. Yeah, people choose to change something because you want to change something for yourself. Yeah, it doesn't evolve. Evolve is something that it happens naturally or because of a certain purpose. Yeah. Resurgence must be grounded in everyday practice of responsibility, not symbolic gesture. Yeah. So re-indigenization without accountability risks reproducing colonial structures. Yeah. So again, we really have to look at and kind of assess sometimes like how we act. Yeah. Are we acting in the identity of our ancestors, or are we acting in the identity of the colonial space that we've been brought up in? So examples of this, 2002, Arakaki versus Cayetano. Yeah. So if we look at that last name, Arakaki. Local Okinawans collaborate in a lawsuit with Thurston Twiggs Smith. Thurston Twiggs Smith is very popular person. He's the line from the original ones who overthrew the Queen. Yeah. So this is a direct descendant. A descendant of Lauren Thurston, who played prominent role in the illegal overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani and the Kingdom of Hawaii. So this was to stop the state of Hawaii, Department of Hawaii Homelands, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, to grant provision of exclusive benefits to persons of Hawaiian or Native Hawaiian ancestry. So this is in 2002, yeah, and it's happening now again. Yeah, this is being challenged one more time. Restrain further issuing of homestead leases, restrain state from depositing any further funds into DHHL trust funds, restrain OHA from encumbering any parts of or parts of accounts or assets, restrain state DHHL OHA from using any further bonds, restrain the state from making payments to or for DHHL or OHA, and restrain OHA, DHHL, HHC from expending any further funds for lobbying, advertising, or other advocacy of the allegedly racially discriminatory goals of OHA and DHHL. Yeah. So this is their interpretation. This is an Okinawan who thinks that this is discriminatory. Yeah. But we got to remember the lands were taken away from the Hawaiians without their permission. Yeah. And it was never given back. Yeah. So Hawaiians are still fighting for their lands. They're still asking for their lands back, and there's waiting lists. Yeah. And then there's people here and now, and the guy who's doing it now wants to make it seem like, oh, come on everybody, let's join in on this lawsuit because it's you guys too that should have this privilege to get land. Yeah. So there's something kind of wrong with that. Yeah. So another example. This guy, our former governor, Ige, when he became governor, oh, the Okinawa community was so happy. Yeah. I wasn't happy. I was like, wait, let's see what this guy does first. Let's see how he is. And it turned out he was a bad guy. Yeah. With TMT here on the island of Hawaii, yeah. I don't know how many of you went up to when they had the sit-in with the kupuna up there and they had set up everything. We went up, I went up. I was there the day that Ige said all of those things about the Hawaiians. That they were doing drugs up there, that the place was filthy, that people are not following, they're breaking the law, they're doing all kinds of things up there. That was so embarrassing to hear that come out that day. And as an Okinawan, I just cried because it was like, he represents us. And he wasn't even there to see how that place was being run. That is community. That was community up there. That was, it was amazing what was happening up on the Mauna. He never stepped foot in there and he blamed and said all of those things about the Hawaiians. So we felt as individuals, as part of the Okinawa community, we gathered some of our friends and we went up and we presented protocol and gifts to the kupuna and a signed letter from a lot of our friends and families saying that we don't support what Ige did and we apologize for that. Yeah, we got blasted for that after. Yeah, we got blasted from some of the Okinawa community saying, why did you go up and represent us? We didn't go up and represent the Okinawa community. We went to represent ourselves as people from this community, from who we are. That, yes, we're Okinawan too, and we don't stand for that. We understand because we know our responsibility here in Hawaii. Yeah, so we also participated in the walk in Waikiki, where there was over, 10,000 people that went to show our support. Yeah. So again, looking at how we walk the walk, or we walk the talk. Yeah. Then, on the neighbor, on you guys' neighbor island, this guy, another Uchinanchu, yeah. You guys know who he is. Former mayor. Former Mayor Arakal. Yeah. So he was the one who said the rocks are not sacred when he moved stuff and he destroyed the sacred sites. And he came out and actually told the Hawaiians that the couple was broken, Christianity was thrown away, and there's no such things as sacred rocks. Yeah. So again, another Uchinanchu whose face represents all of us too, yeah, who went out and basically did stuff against the Hawaiian community there. Okay, and then there's this other guy, I took his face off, but he's still around and he's a prominent person within the Okinawa community. And he advocates against affordable housing and against land use restrictions and development fees. Yeah, so he's very much in commodification and development of Hawaii. He has capitalist interests in lands that belong to Hawaiians. Financial gain and power. He's a major voice for developers in Hawaii. Common to see him at City Hall fighting against land use restrictions or criticizing proposed development fees. Yeah. Again, this is on the side of developers like millionaires and big mainland companies. More focus on the developers' interest and financial gain than on Native Hawaiians. Contributes to the displacement of Native Hawaiians. And if we look at that, we think about 53% of Native Hawaiians don't even live in Hawaii now because they can't afford it. Yeah. So that's helping. This kind of engagement is helping to push Native Hawaiians out from their own lands. Yeah. So again, if we're going to be in leadership positions, what do we do? Do we do engagement that's going to help the Native Hawaiians, or are we going to do engagement that's going to push them off their land? Yeah. Okay, as Uchinanchu community appropriation, when we talk about that, the logo for this year for the 125th anniversary, if we look at that, down in the corner, I have the logo for the for PVS, the Polynesian Voyaging Society. Yeah, the canoe. They used a similar picture in this 125th anniversary. Why do they have sails on that boat? Our first generation didn't come on boats with sails. Yeah, they came on steamships. The bird that they're using, yeah, is, we look at Kolonuiakea, the immersion school on the island of Oahu, and other Hawaiian and Polynesian groups that use the bird as their symbol, and they're using the bird in this too. Yeah, what does the bird have to do with our immigrants or 125th anniversary? Yeah, our immigrants of first generation didn't come here by themselves by using navigation. Yeah, they came on ships that were owned by and contracted by the plantations. Yeah, the Okinawa Festival uses that theme all the time. There's this banner that everybody takes a picture in front, Uchinanchu Aloha. Yeah, so some people will look at that and say, oh, yo, that's nice. Yeah, we live in Hawaii, Uchinanchu Aloha. But Uchinanchu Aloha tells us that it's Uchinanchu Aloha. Aloha doesn't belong to Uchinanchu. Yeah. Why use aloha? Why don't we use our own word? There's an Okinawa word that we can use for that. Yeah. Don't take a Hawaiian word and put ownership to it. Yeah, Uchinanchu Aloha. Then there's this mixing, Alohaisai. Yeah. That too, again, two languages that are endangered. We have our own language. Hawaii has their own language. both languages are endangered. But to put it and make a cute word, alo haisai, yeah, doesn't even make sense. Alo in Hawaiian means face. Haisai is informal greeting, yeah, for Okinawans, yeah. Face high, that's what it means. Yeah, so by putting the word together, it doesn't even have a meaning to it. Where in indigenous, if we're talking about language, in Okinawan or Hawaiian, there's always a meaning to the word. Yeah. In that, there's no meaning. It's just a mixed, a dissection of words that are put together. Yeah. So again, how do we walk the talk? Yeah. Chirakunasun. Yeah. So cleanse, to purify, to detoxify. So chirakunasun is a word that we can use to detox, yeah, or decolonize ourselves. Re-indigenize. Yeah. Essentially, peace, to detox and engage in community. Ethnography exposes genealogy and extends beyond mere political or educational praxis. And also decolonization brings about repatriation of indigenous land and life. Yeah. So part of it is like what Norman created for one of our summits, this picture of the Hogen Fuda being broken, yeah, so that we can speak our language again. Yeah, it's breaking that, and kind of like a resistance, I guess you can say, to bring back. But we have to go through that. Yeah, we have to go through that part. Okay, we have Fuji Kukuri. Is we cannot control the winds, but we can always change out our sails. When we change our sails, we arrive not necessarily where we think we need to be, but exactly where we are supposed to be. The winds and other signs from the universe carry the voices of our ancestors, teachers, and navigators who speak to us if we will listen. They have taught us how to exist in the world today and sail with indigenous wisdom while engaging 21st century connections as we reflect, observe, and live. Yeah. So again, looking at this, it gives us hints of how we can walk the talk. Yeah. Internalizing things. There's a difference between doing and a difference between doing and internalizing. Yeah. So something that we're familiar with here is kalo, or tarot, but it's also something familiar in Okinawa too, and it's used as a symbol of community connectiveness and family. Yeah. So tamu kanasashi no dui kwa ga mariru. So the taro that is beloved will bring forth good shoots. Yeah. So need to nurture the source of our ancestral knowledge, so that it will ensure the generation, such as a simple but yet profound lesson in which our ancestors created this proverb based on ancestral worldview through simple observation. Again, using our senses to see what's around us, yeah, and learn from what's around us. Our ancestors could see that these kugani kutuba, or proverbs, golden phrases, would become valuable messages and significant cultural hypothesis in keeping our roots strong and able to produce kwa, or offspring, to sustain and feed who we are as a people and internalize our ancestral identity. Yeah. Okay, and then here, research that we do as indigenous people is a ceremony that allows us to raise level of consciousness and insight into the world through going forward together with open minds and good hearts, we have uncovered the nature of this ceremony. So this is from the book Research is Ceremony. So if we look at us as indigenous scholars, there's a difference between Western scholars or Western academics and indigenous. Yeah. Foundation of who we are is our Uyafa Fuji, or our ancestors. We need to njung, or to observe through thoughts, ideas, knowledge that we can gather and apply critical analysis to, so that we can find our remedies in our specific journey to internalize identity and connection to ancestors. So this leads to agency. Agency meaning like engagement, or what we do. Yeah, our wanting to do something. Engage for agency. Yeah. Part of finding is getting lost, and when you are lost, you start to open up and listen. Yeah. So again, it's part of like, I guess, some people might not understand, or they're still finding through their journey. So that's important, because if everything was easy, it wouldn't have an impact. Yeah. But if we look like what we looked at today, some people might say that, oh, that was very hard to take, some things that came up in the presentation. Yeah. And even hard to talk about. But then that's the good thing, is that when we look at it and we analyze it or we think about it, then it helps us to become stronger, or it helps us to really think and see how we're gonna take the agency to move forward. Yeah. So this is a picture of Norman's auntie, who's known through this song, Lady of Waihole. Yeah, you guys heard that song before, yeah? So yes, it's about her, Okinawan lady. Yeah. So she was loved by a lot of the Hawaiian people on that side of the island in Oahu. So she didn't necessarily like, from what Norman said, his family says is that she didn't necessarily like go out because she wanted to support the Hawaiians. But her connection to land, and she knew the importance of water, and for them to survive, to have their farm. Yeah. So she was one of the staunch activists against the development, or the taking of the water on that side of the island. Yeah.
Or the land struggle.
The land struggles. So not forgetting where we come from, navigating with eyes fixed on the guiding star, which is our past as we move forward, and indigenous leadership, Kajitui, which nourishes our family and community. So she's an example, but then there are other first generation who went out in these land struggles that the Hawaiians had, and supported them, and were in the back of the Hawaiians at all of these struggles, and were so-called activists. Yeah. Okay, so re-indigenizing Okinawan identity in Hawaii is not simply about reclaiming culture. It's about transforming and maintaining relationships through responsible positionality. Yeah. So again, when I say in Hawaii, those of you online who are from the continent, you can also connect that to where you guys are too. As Asian educators and scholars in occupied indigenous spaces, while teaching our narratives, we also have the obligation to recognize and support the native or first peoples and their lands, or we ourselves become the neo-colonizer. Yeah. So relations, reciprocity, resistance, these are all things like we can look at as Asian American studies against tyranny. What kinds of relations, what kinds of reciprocity, how and for who are we resisting? Yeah. And then last, just this from to Levi Smith. What does excellence mean in an education system that is with odds with our aspirations, our benchmarks of excellence have to be intergenerational. Yeah. So again, what we're doing within our community cannot be like what we see in a lot of clubs and in a lot of spaces where the older generation are doing stuff. Like when you guys go to Shirenkai or when you go to picnics, who's there? Majority are usually the older generation. Where are the children? If we look at, 40, 50, yeah, 40, maybe 40, 50 years ago, and we think about the picnics and the Shinenkais and stuff that we had then, it was intergenerational, I think. The children were there. Yeah, the children were there at the Shinenkai. The children were there at the picnics. But now when we look at these events, where are they? Yeah, where's the intergenerational activities and things like that? Yeah, it's become very almost one generation. Yeah, so what's going to happen? How do you fix that? Okay, so that finishes this. So open up to discussion. Any comments or questions, or if we can go back to that too. How do we walk the talk? Yeah. Those of you online can start putting in any questions or comments.
I'm very grateful to be part of the Luchu workshop. It's changed my view of what's going on, not only with the Hawaiians, but it's kind of connected to the Okinawans and it's connected to the Native Americans and people around the world. But I must say that I'm much more sensitive to the Hawaiian nation. And yes, it's changed my perspective about life and how to be more generous to people who have been colonized. Yeah.
Well, how do you think, or why do you think that change came up?
Lack of education, lack of, yeah. Before, I was navigating in just what everybody else around was navigating, but educating and seeing and understanding more sensitive and harder to perceive issues. I've just changed my views about what's going on. And I'm actually glad I'm happy to be in Okinawan, and I always was, but now I see it in a different perspective. It's not just culture and whatever, but it's deeper, has deeper meanings, and interconnecting to other people who are in the same situation. So I'm totally glad my outlook has changed. I think I'm not as selfish. But as I said, like, what do you do? Where to get more information? Like, just all of those things. How do you get? How do you become more effective?
Yeah, so let's put that out to you guys for one, how do you walk the talk? And then, is it important to internalize identity? Or is it okay just to walk around and say, oh, I'm Okinawan, oh, I make sata andagi, I go to the festival, I'm Okinawan because I was born Okinawan. Yeah. What is important about internalizing that? Or is it important? Is it enough to just take the privilege of being born and having the blood?
Could we have that as a turn and talk discussion? Would I want to-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't talk to Auntie June about it. Maybe for like a few minutes, and then we can all maybe come together and share.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do that then. If you guys can kind of talk it with like that group there, this group. Talk about it and see, you know, what you guys have to discuss with each other. Those of you online, you can start putting on stuff if you want to. Just take like, what, 5 minutes? Yeah?
They used to come to the morning time,
Well, what do you think would make that?
At first they said, oh, senior ladies or something happened, but nothing happened. And they still didn't go to the camp, which is valid. And for me to ask, it's because then, I guess, and then God is very efficient with us.
Our positionality
So
in
it's
society
really hard
really
for you and me to survive
and
and
responsibility of relating.
So I would really like to have
I think it's invalid.
this
This is
sort
our
of
idea.
idea, so it's what you can do. Why do you come? Where do you come? I know, my parents forced me.
But
You gotta come help dad, yeah. That's great.
yeah, that's my journey is now being many indigenous.
So tell us about, so you know, you're doing the sessions as far as time, so is it, can I assess the
Yeah, I think that might be able to.
it's all about the and what to see, what to hear all of this. And here's something my son is more interested in this world, my own family. Yeah. Yeah, and speaking from the Philippines, you know, that's why it's a totally different culture, and young kids, you know, and they have he's trying to talk to his children, and can, it'll come out, whatever he's talking, it will come out. Oh.
It's hard.
How do you inject these things into their brain? That is so hard to do before it gets off. But at least young kids, at least they participate.
Forced it.
Yeah.
That's where it comes out.
Yeah.
When you forced it.
Yes, exactly.
I was forced to do things that I don't like to take care of.
Yeah.
I'm very life gets in the way. And, I think it's time to figure out how to get certain things. Life, whatever, it's just, that's how it is. You gotta have some changes.
Yeah. I used to force my kids to do things, and then they turned against me. It's like, you don't force us to do that. I'm such a terrible mother. Force them. That's what she's important to my friends. My friends, you know your grandma. You know how terrible she is. She's the person that's, it's like, I'm this terrible monster.
Similarity.
How old are you?
The twins are 8, and then the youngest one just not 5. So they're in second grade, going on their way, but the other one's in kindergarten. You know, and I'm in school, then I sort of start those children. So, and I try to, put in like some things, but I get shut down. I mean, that's not something. Jeez. Why am I so troubled?
I didn't have my mom force me to experiment a lot of stuff, but then I would always ground people doing all that. So you see, they were part of
Yeah.
and you know, I used to force me. And it was funny because I would ask, I don't know what time. How come you don't force me to play some cheat or pick up the phone? Said that you gotta ask me. That's what I'm trying to force me. And I felt kind of disappointed. It's not never for them to start something. I mean, at this point, it's like, you would have been at this particular level if you actually forced me. So yeah, there's a connection to that as far as having.
But like, it was just like, yeah, what I really appreciate about Ukwanshin is
And I think your grandkids is going to understand that after.
groups.
Be nice if they understand.
Okay, so last year,
So open about that.
in June and in July, I took my whole family, 8 of us, to so the first trip we went to the second trip we went to Boston, and we just came back from so my grandson, when my daughter was like, oh, this is I'm missing it. You want to call it and out right away, also, everyone's going to see this story. So now, the Tai Kai is not right. So I'm pumping throughout the years to see people, and so have this, and then my son-in-law is going to say, I want to go, I want to see, I want to be there. So now my grandson is slowly, they're getting to, they want, and so now they're beginning to appreciate the Japanese And we're in zero time, we're so fun. Like, I know, last year, you know how the Japanese say so politely, they say, arigato. And then, the youngest one, we just say, "Irimayo." She could say,
Okay, let's see what you guys were talking about. Let's start with that group there. If you guys can share what you guys were. Talk loud so that can pick up on.
This is Mary Korea. She came to join us. She was saying her grandma is Okinawa. And so she was talking about the ideals of her grandmother in the plantation situations. And, yeah, and all the intermarriages. She's Korea. And so
And the children didn't care, they just went on and lived better lives. They lived better lives and better lives and better lives. And they emphasized education.
You guys.
I don't know, like, we were just kind of talking about the difficulty of getting the younger generation to, I don't know, have some responsibility, you know, to their identity and things like that, without, I don't know, whether or not you have to force them or whether or they come to it on their own. You know.
Ola, are you forced?
that's not gonna get you. We're all guys.
Are you forced?
At least he's honest.
Do you want to be here?
sometimes.
Okay. And that group.
What was the question that we were supposed to answer? 'Cause I feel like we all went on different.
No, that's good. If you guys can just talk about what you guys, because I like what I like what I was hearing from that side too, like what you guys were, what was mentioned about like kids camp and.
So as far as walking the talk, everybody comes in at different levels as far as where they are in their own personal journey through indigeneity and, you know, finding your roots, and not only finding your roots but understanding them. And it can feel like, you know, this talk that you come to maybe once a month is not enough. So how do you fill the gap in between the times that you can get, you know, here? And one of the ways as a teacher of art and that kind of stuff is always trying to find the small ways that you can build like small little communities, even if it's with people who aren't necessarily connected, whether they're coming here or if they have like a passing interest in this kind of stuff. If you're able to teach what little you know to someone else, or you share information between each other, that is sort of part of walking the talk. Because then through your ability to retell what you heard here is reinforcing it in your head. And maybe you might not get everything right, you might not get everything correct every single time, but you're still going through the motions of not only breaking down the like metaphorical house with all the scaffolding in your head of what was set up in place before very front loaded at your 20s to 30s. And it's difficult to compete with like all of the other forms of entertainment that kind of just are there to get you to the next day kind of thing. But when it comes to cultural work like this, it's, you know, it's an everyday thing. So even if it's like 10 minutes a day, if that's what you can sacrifice or fit into your schedule, that can go like a long way as far as getting you closer aligned to, you know, realistically showing up more and more and more in these places. And it's really difficult to talk to other people in my generation, I feel, about these kinds of things because they're very, I don't want to say superficial or shallow, but maybe they're coming in at different parts of, you know, what is enough for them existing on this rock that we call home. So it's very difficult.
Can I add on to that too? And tying to what Auntie Diana was saying, and also what you guys were talking about with education. So I'm a middle school teacher. I teach at Hilo Intermediate School, and it's just so interesting because the education system now, and as it stemmed from a very colonial capitalist way of being and being factory workers, it's all about performance. And I think that really does leak into how we feel about being, or just learning more about our indigeneity. It can be like, oh, if I'm talking the talk, it's like, oh yeah, I go to these workshops, I go to the festival every year. It's like, okay, cool, like, and that's not to say that that's a performance, we're all on our own pace, but like, to be culturally grounded in not just being uchinachu, but just in being in relationships is what like we're talking about with feeling like, oh yeah, there's such amazing opportunities once a month, and then it's just like, okay, I'm gonna pause and wait here until the next month. But how do we keep that conversation going and feeling like really grounded in like just engaging with each other in an honest way that's not just like we're saying that we did it, but yeah, like 10 minutes a day being on just like a FaceTime call, maybe we can body double with each other and like say like, oh, I'm doing this, but like in Uchinachi or Uchinaguchi or whatever language. That's something that me and my partner are also talking about. They're the curriculum developer at this Aloha Aina organization on Oahu called Ku'ulua Kalana, and something that they're talking about with their organization is like, how do we have like time and space for dreaming with our young people, which also goes into education and feeling like we're working towards something together, so it's not just like, okay, inch by inch by inch, but like we're part of it. But yeah, and how we see like just day-to-day work and how can we connect it to like theory and collective liberation with not just like Kanaka Maoli, but also Uchinachu, Shimachu, people in Palestine. And I think what I really appreciate about Ukwanshin and Kabudan is that they're like explicitly political, like visionaries, and it's like, how can we bring that to our young people to have a more like connected, you know, to the more abstract world that bridges us to other indigenous people. And yeah, that's how the conversation about the Children's Day camp came up, and it's just like, oh, I'm excited to just keep talking about ideas, maybe having like a decolonial arts session with Akane or other Chimanchu artists for example, incredible. But yeah.
Yeah, so are we bringing up that too? Like you guys are saying, okay, we have this workshop once a month, yeah? There's that break of 1 month between getting together. But think about the children's camp, that's only once a year, yeah? What goes on from the time the camp is finished to the time you have another one, yeah? What's being done with the children? What's being reinforced, or is there any reinforcement with the children? You know, what is the purpose of the camp? To just have identity for 4 days? Or is it supposed to be, you're just gonna hope, okay, after this finish, oh, I hope my son, my daughter, my grandchild will continue the interest in Okinawan stuff. Yeah. That, if you look at it percentage-wise, to put them on their own without any reinforcement for 1 year, that would be really rare, I think. I don't see any of the communities. Well, Maui's kind of doing a little bit of it. But between the kids' camp, I don't see any reinforcement. Yeah. What's being done between those things? Yeah. So again, it's like what she was saying, creating spaces, creating opportunities for people to get together even for 10 minutes, or maybe from 10 minutes it can grow into half an hour or to an hour, meeting online or getting together someplace, or like what was also just shared, like using Akane, and you have artists who can create a space for kids to come and learn about creating something, and then you can also expose them to political art. Yeah, not that we want to change and make all of our kids into activists, but it's it's really, if we look at say our community now, and we look at the Hawaiian community, if you have Hawaiian things, like you have a seminar or a workshop, or you have like a hakane, or you have these symposiums on, or talks on certain things, you see a lot of young people come out. Why is that? Yeah. What about our community when we have Okinawan stuff? It used to be, if we have Okinawan things, yeah, you would see a lot of the community coming out, and then the younger people, because the families would bring the younger people with them. Yeah. But you don't see that anymore. Yeah.
So we have taiko that goes on shortly here, and there's lots of students in karate who take that on throughout the year. I think those are good. And also in our public schools, as Jay was saying, that if all the children were to learn about their culture individually, I think then as, the sensitivity becomes available, right, to us, Diane? Yeah, and so then it becomes where each individual child learns about their, indigenous cultures, and it could be 5, right, for each child. Right? You have all these books, your name is Rivera, it's, okay, so then you have all that, and then with the sensitivity, then to each learn each other's, then that makes us a stronger community in that sense, right? So, and through art, yes, because everything should be through art. But I think, there's, here, I find that there's hope. I'm not an individual sitting at home thinking, well, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. So here, as a community, that's why we come together to learn more and to be stronger together.
Okay, so if I ask you guys, what is the membership of Uyokinawa? What is the numbers for the membership?
Last I remember, it was over 400 family members, but that was a long time ago. So
I don't think it's 400
it's less?
yeah.
200.
For real?
100.
And half of them are crazy. Yeah, they're 80 years old and older. So they're on this list at our, for our annual lunch.
beginning of the year celebration, but when you look around, it's all older. There's-
Yeah.
The last one, I can't remember if this past year. Was it this past one or last year's one? There was a lot more kids, that I remember, compared to like other years. It could have been last year's one. Which was, I mean, it was nice to see, but kind of shocked that 200 family members. That's crazy.
Has there been discussions within the club about, okay, why, what's happening? You know, where are these other families? Where did they go to, or how come they're not participating anymore, or you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Because a lot of clubs, from what I see, they're just continuing.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, is that it's hard to change things. But if you offer a new idea, a lot of people are not open to new ideas, you know. So yeah, I mean, I joined the board to get specifically to try and get younger people in, you know. But it's hard if you don't want to try different things.
Yeah. I mean, in Honolulu, I see a lot of clubs trying new things, but part of the trying new things to try and get the young people to come is taking out Okinawan things.
Yeah.
And it still hasn't helped with the club growth. Yeah.
I kind of think that if you look at like the big Christian churches and how they keep membership and they also grow, there's like certain things that they do to make people who are newcomers to the group, make them feel part of the group and welcome as part of the group. It's a real effort, a conscientious kind of a thing that they have thought out, and then they implement it, and it works. And some people are comfortable with that, and some people aren't comfortable with that. But if you study their system of getting new members to really feel part of the group, they have a system.
Yeah. I think some of it too is just, you know, when groups or clubs just follow the schedule to just continue it. Yeah. Like from what I saw online for the kids camp, the kids were using Uchinaguchi. They seem proud. The ones that they filmed seem proud of using it. They were having fun. But again, it's like, okay, within that 4 days, they have that, but then after it's finished, what's being reinforced at home? What's being reinforced in the community? Where's the examples, the living examples of Okinawan language, of Okinawan dance and music, of Okinawan art? Where are those people? Where are the models within the community that the children can see? Like us growing up, we had that. We had those people alive and within the community. Now it's like where are they? Yeah. And then when you start cutting things at those gatherings like Shinenkai or Bonenkai or picnic, you start cutting the Okinawa stuff. The children don't have anything to look at or to experience. Yeah. Like for me, I was forced to go to the Shinenkais and stuff like that. But I appreciate it now because it's because of that I got to appreciate Okinawan dance and music. Because I was exposed to it all the time. We went to Shinenkai, it was there. We went to Bonenkai, Okinawa music and dance. We went to picnic, that's all we heard on the loudspeaker was Okinawa music. But then now, how much of that is being exposed to the younger generation? If you don't have the models, if you don't have the examples, if you don't have the product, what do the kids have to take from it? Yeah.
I feel like I'd like to do something, or I'd like to know what's out here, especially on the maybe Big Island, and I look and there's I don't see other examples that I can go further. It's like the children. Participate, and then after that, what's next?
Yeah. So it's getting together and discussing, with you guys, with yourselves, and seeing if you can create more spaces to continue like these discussions. Some people might be afraid because, like what she said, she's happy that Ukwanshin is political, but there's people who don't like that. Yeah. Which is kind of unfortunate because you can't separate politics from our culture and history. If that can be understood, then that would be great. But then, some people, all they want is the Disney aspect of identity.
That's funny because you can't separate political or politics with anything these days. So for somebody to say, oh, we're not being interested in something like this because it's too political, that's insane. My brain, that don't make no sense. Because you cannot help but get politics involved with how it is now.
Yeah. But then stuff like today's one, Asian settler colonialism, or you talk about that, that's really hard for a lot of people to take, to even come out from their mouth. Coming from the community, from our community, yeah. First thing I always hear is, oh, I'm not a settler. Yes. So.
Conversation like that a couple months ago. Someone was like my age, basically.
Oh.
Where they're saying, no, we're invited here. Different. We're good.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna bring up Lola Walker. Okay, because so I know Ola Initiative, amazing organization. They do work. It's just Nico and Patrick, this couple that has started clearing out this fish pond down by what's that one? Down by Seaside, down Keaukaha, and every Saturday, sometimes they have them on like Wednesdays, but it's open to any community member. Basically, we do like planting of native species down there, clearing out the California grass, but basically restoring the fish pond there. They work with all different public schools, Kamehameha schools. That's a really cool opportunity for us if we wanted to get on Aina, which is like, like taking care of Aina and baby stewards is one aspect of indigenous culture everywhere. If we wanted to gather there, they different kinds of like levels of engaging with Aina. Like if you want to be in the shade, on the side, you want to get in the dirt, the mud, you can. But it's great for all ages, anybody, and it's available for anyone, everyone. So I just want to throw that out there. If you wanted to have a little local walk, Saturday work day, just talk story. Lynn and I, like, we take pictures for her, like, we count down in Gucci, which is really cute and fun. But yeah, that's one point of just keeping the relationship going, not just with this community inside of the classroom, which is amazing and how I love, but also outside and doing something that's going to sustain for generations forward. Yeah, local walk on Saturdays.
Yeah, I think one of the lucky things we have is that in Hawaii and especially your island here, there's a lot of Hawaiian activities that you can do and learn from for indigenous identity and how we take care of land, so that we can reconnect to our own ways of what our ancestors did and what we should be doing to connect that identity. Yeah, because there can be, that group had a lot of their discussion was about education and how each generation we our parents kind of like push that. Education is important. Education is important, but how are you going to use the education? Yeah, are you going to use the education to become like what we saw on the presentation, to become privileged and entitled? Yeah. Education can work in two ways. It can take you to that path, or it can take you to the other path of being more open and accepting and seeing how we can reconnect and internalize our identity as Okinawan, or as Luchu people again. But part of it, like there's a lot of the young generation that's very engaging, and they're very passionate in doing stuff. But their whole general purpose is, when I ask them, they talk about resistance. Yeah, they take the Western way of thinking about revitalization, and they use resistance. But then I explain to them that you have to have acceptance of our identity as well as our faults, as what we do when we live in somebody else's space, like in Hawaii or on Turtle Island on the continent. Yeah, how do we treat the native people? Yeah, how do we treat the native land? Because that's not how our ancestors were in our own ancestral areas. So how do we do that? Yeah. And I think a lot of that learning we can learn from what the Hawaiians are doing in Hawaii now, with revitalization of Lo'ikalo and Lokoi'a, and going up to the mountains and replanting and doing those kinds of things. Yeah. It's not only, if we look at the Hawaiian community as an example, they're not only revitalizing or taking care of Aina, they're taking care, of themselves, of the culture, the language. They're taking care of what their extension is. Yeah, and that extension actually is the foundation, where they come from, and that's our foundation too. Yeah, our foundation is the land, is where we come from too. Yeah. So like next week Saturday, I think, is the 20th. There's going to be a big march in Honolulu for the water, and there's a group of our Okinawan members who they call them the Miji Mamuya, or the water protectors, And they're gonna be walking in that too, because they connect and they see what's happening in Okinawa with our water, like what you guys saw in the presentation, yeah, how 1/3 of the water in Okinawa now is contaminated because of military bases. And we see the same thing in Hawaii, yeah. You guys are lucky on this island, you have so much pure water here still yet. Honolulu, I don't know how much more we can go when, you know, they said that aquifer that at Red Hill, there's contamination that's moving into other parts right now too. So that's gonna be water from Aiea all the way down to Waikiki, that's gonna be wiped out. Yeah, what do we do then? Yeah, so again, you know, talking about this kind of stuff and thinking about, again, how do we internalize identity? It's really hard, and it is a hard discussion. It's hard talk. It's hard things to face or talk about. But I think if we're gonna strengthen the community, we have to strengthen the foundations. Yeah. And then again, thinking about like what you guys were just doing in these small discussions. Yeah, thinking about like, okay, what are we gonna do for our own community? What are we gonna do for Hui Okinawa? Yeah. Can we do anything with the children after kids camp? Can we do anything during the year with the kids? Yeah. What can we do? But then that takes sacrifice, that takes energy, that takes volunteers, that takes commitment. Yeah. But then you have to find the people who are going to be able to do that too. Yeah.
Can I say something about our technical group? I'm very proud of our technical group. We're continuing to teach them the Okinawan style, which is Kabudan martial arts style. And our name is Hui Okinawa, or Hui Okaiko.
Yeah, you guys are surviving even after Troy left. And,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it takes that. Yeah. It takes people who are gonna take that commitment and take the time, and you know a lot of it is sacrifice too, which is hard to find nowadays. Yeah.
Norman, did you post this stuff in the chat?
Yeah, I was
Or
just trying to.
Do you wanna bring it up?
No. I was just trying to see if I can get a reaction.
Okay.
Actually though, can I just make a comment about what we've been talking about? And I don't know, hopefully this may help give some structure to like what when we think about culture and identity. I think a lot of folks, I think for a lot of people, right, in general, like culture, heritage stuff has become important. But I think what kind of happens when we go from, we think about culture and what's different from what we do in indigenous culture practices. A lot of, when we think about culture and heritage, it becomes kind of self-reflective. It becomes, you think about who you are and, you know, you think about where you come from and all that. It's good to have that self-reflection. But I think sometimes where it falls short is the other half of it. This is the part that really gets emphasized in indigenous culture and indigenous cultural practices, the relationships that come from that self-reflection. And I think, you know, you can reflect, you can go to the Okinawan Festival, you can study Sanshin, you can do all these things, become a great mind, a great practitioner of Okinawan culture. But if that doesn't get carried to a relationship, then that the practice itself becomes it's a personal practice. It doesn't become a communal practice anymore. And I think that's the part that sometimes gets really when people forget about that part, the how do you take yourself as a Shinanchu, and how do you relate to the rest of the world? If you don't take that part of that the relationship, and you know the ways that relationships are built, those are the things that's the kind of knowledge that's built into about the things that the plants and the trees know how to do. That's something that we as a people know how to do because our ancestors did it for so long and they practiced that. And somewhere along the line, we forgot how to do it that way, right? That the natural order things, and basically how to build these relationships, how do we relate to other people, how do we accept people and things like that in the way that our ancestors taught us how to do it. And so I think, yeah, if we just focus on only just cultural practice and cultural knowledge, that's the important part is that to have you reflect on who you are. But the second part of that now that you know that you have that understanding of who you are, where you come from, how does that go into the relationships that you build, and even from an organizational standpoint, then what kind of relationships need to be made, what kind of relationships are existing, what kind of gaps, now that our society is so different from just a generation ago, the way that we relate to each other is so different now. What kind of relationships do we need to form? And how can our ancestral knowledge help us to fill those gaps in the ways that we relate to each other? I think by kind of addressing those questions, I think it can really help us in a lot of different ways. It can help us individually, because each one of you in your comments have you touched upon this idea about basically taking these things that you do and that you are, and how does that help you with the relationships that you have in the community, how that the relationships that you have with the political climates that you're in, the relationships with other people and things like other indigenous communities and things like that. So hopefully, that if we all kind of take the time to really think about that extra step, that okay, now that we do have if you do take that knowledge, if you take that information, really think about the harder part of that is how does that go into the work of building relationships. And it doesn't have to necessarily be an Okinawan relationship, but the better that the relationship, it always involves more people, and the more that you bring to that relationship, it's easier to create that relationship. And part of understanding your heritage and ancestral knowledge is understanding yourself and having more, not understanding yourself just to hoard knowledge, to hoard identity, but rather how much of that can you bring to enrich these relationships that you're going to make throughout the places that you go to, and your relationship with just the place that you are that's away from your ancestral homeland.
So expanding on that part of relationship, when we go into lunch, then continue your conversations during lunch, and then we'll do the breakouts after, but also, connecting to that relationship. We're here and we can use this place because of the relationship that we have with the Hawaiian community. With the Hawaiian community here at Kahakaula. Those of you who are new here, this building and this area is Kahakaula Oke'elikolani, the College of Hawaiian Language at the University of Hilo. This place was started, and it still houses the office and work of some of the pioneers who started the Hawaiian language movement, like Uncle Larry, Kumupila, Kaanoe, Kumukeki, who's Okinawan and a big supporter of us. And that's why we can use this place for free. We shouldn't take advantage of it, and that's why I really push to see if we can get more people to come, because it doesn't make sense for us to have 4 people here, and we're using the air conditioning, we're using the space for free, to have these discussions, because they want to see our community grow. Kumupila pushed me to start the curriculum here for Okinawa language, which we had this past semester for the first time, and I'm gonna say it's a better class than what they have at Manoa in Honolulu, because to take the Okinawan language literature class there, they want you to take 2 years of Japanese language first. That's the prerequisite, yeah. And here they want to expand it, they want to start the second level, they want to continue it. They really, because of what they had to go through already, and because what Kumupila says is they want to help those communities who came over as plantation workers, to see those communities also survive and also flourish with their languages and culture. Yeah. So we're really lucky to be able to come to this space and to be able to have this and also be part of this college to bring up the next generations to be able to not only learn Hawaiian language, but also to learn our own culture, yeah, and to be able to do that. So in their whole thing is that the give back is what our community does, and how much we grow and continue to survive, yeah. So hopefully we can get more people to come, more people to help, and then also to support what they do here too at the college, yeah. Because you guys are so lucky. You guys are so lucky on this island, because it's hard to do a lot of things on Oahu. Yeah. Okay. So anything else from online? Or?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Yeah, so we can break for lunch and then we'll do the other breakouts after that. Hey, Nihei David. Oh, yeah. Yes.
This is Mary Colleen, and she's gonna introduce her friends.
And he said, you can bring others,